The residents of the Amona outpost settlement have been given an ultimatum: sign a non-violence waiver by 10 a.m. today or be forced out. With the December 25th evacuation date looming over everyone's heads, tensions are flaring. Joining me in the studio today are Uri Zaki, the president of the Meretz Party National Assembly, and Simcha Rothman, the legal advisor of the Israeli Movement for Governability and Democracy, to expand on these issues. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So today, the government is pressuring Amona residents to sign these non-violence pledges. But didn't Amona already allegedly, pledge to leave peacefully with respect to the first agreement? What is the difference here with what we're seeing?
I think what happened today is that the Supreme Court, whose ruling, there were several rulings, but the government got a final ultimatum till the end of this month, till 25th, if I'm not mistaken, for the Amona outpost to be evacuated. The government today, following the agreement with the Amona residents, asked for postponing of this of the evacuation, and on that background, the Supreme Court said, in order to actually examine whether, because the government got 2 years to make the evacuation, waited till the last moment, and now we're passing the last moment. The Supreme Court said, okay, we'll consider that, but first we need to know that there won't be any violence while the evacuation is taking place.
Now, have there been any changes to the settlement law since the residents agreed not to be violent earlier this week?
To the law that was passed in the Knesset,
yes,
was passed
in
the first.
So these are two different things, but
right.
The law, in the very early stages of this law, Amona was taken out of this law a long time ago. So the law has nothing to do now with the Amona settlement issue. Amona settlement issue is different. They have a different solution. They signed, as you said, for the government. What we see today is the Supreme Court. I can describe it only as something about the ego of the Supreme Court, because there is no legal reason to demand this signature, this resignature, and since it's already today 2 times, because the first time it was until 10 a.m. as you said, what the settlers wrote apparently did not satisfy the court, so they asked for another clarification to be delivered until 5. In few.
Now you say it's unreasonable for them to be pushing the residents to be signing this nonviolence pledge. But in 2006, when families were going to be evacuated from Amona, there was violence that broke out between protesters and the government.
I would just say that the violence was ignited by the police that was evacuated, not by the settlers themselves. And I say that, I guess the viewers know my background. I worked for B'Tselem. I represent, as you said, I'm a leading figure in an Israeli left party that sees the settlement enterprise and Amona itself as illegal and as an existential threat, if you want, on the state of Israel as a national Jewish homeland and a democracy. But there was a brutal attack by the police using horse riders and clubs, and even B'Tselem, that is known for its criticism towards the settlement enterprise and settlements, was very harsh in its criticism against the Israeli police and government for the acts that were done in Amona in 2006.
So what guarantee is there not being violence? If it's obviously not a one-sided issue here, violence comes because of 2 different groups clashing with one another.
The fact that the settlers of Amona and the government agreed to move to other place and to find a solution, a legal solution to build Amona. When people move, there will be no need for police. There will be no need for a conflict. And even a violent policeman or a violent protester cannot cannot ignite something that is not there. And the issues that will be, if it will be a peaceful moving, there will be no police, there will be no clash, and there probably won't be any violence.
So,
the fact that the Supreme Court make this demand is without any authority, without any...
let's talk about the underlying issue now, right? Obviously, the violence is related to this in of itself. You know, there are those who think that Amona itself is a distraction from this larger underlying goal of the settlements bill, which is why I brought it up beforehand, which is to legalize outposts and settlements that would otherwise be illegal. How credible are these fears
of this law passing? Look, honestly, I'm not sure that Amona was the trigger for this legislation, which was a political mean for both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Education, Mr. Bennett, who's the leader of the Beit Yehudi party, which is associated with the settlers, to lower the tensions vis-a-vis Amona and its leadership. If it will pass, you know, we discussed this before. Benny Begin, the son of Menachem Begin, one of the leaders of the old Likud party, I would call it, called this legislation as basically legalizing theft or legalizing robbery. Because what it says that any Jewish outpost that was built on, and I emphasize Jewish because it only refers to basically to Jewish settlements, that was built on privately owned lands, and this was done knowingly, will be legalized by the state. Now this goes against the basic fundamentals of our system, and therefore, if that will be the consequence of Amona, I still think that there is a good chance that it won't pass eventually. But if that will be the case, I think would put the Israeli legal system and the Israeli claims, those I agree with and those I don't agree with, in a very problematic situation vis-a-vis, first of all, the Israeli judicial branch, but also vis-a-vis the world. And we see already what's going on as a result of this legislation attempt.
I think that Benny Begin, who was trying to lead the solution for the Bedouin in the Negev, which basically was to try to legalize hundreds of thousands of illegal houses.
But built on privately owned land.
Built on land that was not owned by the builders and by the Bedouin tribes, was not belong to them, and it was ruled in all the courts that discussed with it. And he said, legally we can kick them out. The court said we can kick them out, but there is a problem here. We need to find a solution, and he worked very hard. He wasn't so much successful with it, but he was trying to convince everyone to solve the Bedouin illegal buildings in the Negev in a certain way that will give benefits to people who got into the land that wasn't theirs, and build on that. But that was Benny Begin, what he tried to do last time he was minister. And now, for some reason, he objects to this law. This law does not it's not taking care of Amona. Amona was taken out of this law long time ago. This law takes care of more than about 4,000 houses that were built on land that its owners and the ownership of lands in Judea and Samaria is a very complicated matter, and this law supposed to solve the problem made by Israeli government. Amona, the houses you mentioned before, in 2006 were demolished in Amona. Those houses were built by Israeli government with money paid from the Israeli government, and then were demolished by the same Israeli government. So to say that the people got into land and without permission and were still in land, it's not true. The government built with mistake, without mistake, we don't know yet. We might never know. But the law is supposed to solve the problem and give compensation. The people who lost their land never got compensation, the law will give them compensation.
All right, well, guys, listen, unfortunately,
Just in one
I'm
sentence.
going to give you, in one sentence, I'll let you respond to this.
I think there's no comparison. I'm not here to defend Benny Begin, whose views I'm very much in opposition to, but it's just not fair to say that there's no complication about ownership of lands on these specific areas which the law covers. These are exactly places where you have not state-owned or state-declared lands, but rather privately owned lands with claimers to that land, and those outposts were built on privately owned lands. That's theft.
Well, guys, we're going to have to end the interview here. Obviously, this is a very heated topic for many, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. All right, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.